Nathan Carter stood on his front porch just after sunrise, sipping black coffee and watching the fog roll across Oak Ridge Estates. He'd only lived in the gated neighborhood for 6 weeks, but the whispers had already reached him about the HOA, about the woman who practically ran it, and especially about her key, Karen Meadows, president of the HOA for nearly a decade. Some called her Ms. Meadows. Others, more candidly, just called her Karen. She was the type who knocked once and opened the door herself. The kind of neighbor who smiled while issuing fines, and she carried a polished silver key that she claimed opened every lock in the subdivision. Nathan had heard the stories, but until this morning, he hadn't cared. Until now, from the corner of the block, the sound of tires crackling over gravel drew his attention. A tan golf cart turned the corner, slowing in front of his drive. There she was, Karen. Blonde bob, clipboard, sunglasses she didn't need, and a keyring hanging from her belt that jingled like a warning. Nathan took another slow sip. The gate that separated his driveway from the street wasn't the standard issue. While most homes had decorative fences, his featured reinforced steel with a coated entry panel, a security camera, and a backup lock designed for hurricane zones. He'd installed it 2 days after moving in. Karen stepped out of her car and walked straight to the gate. She didn't greet him, didn't wave, just reached for her keyring and held up the so-called master key like she was performing a magic trick. Nathan stayed silent, arms crossed. The key slid into the lock and stopped. Karen jiggled it, then she forced it, then she frowned. "I'm here for an inspection," she called out, her voice sharp, as though Nathan had somehow messed up the moment. "There's been a complaint about improper lighting fixtures. Your address was flagged." Nathan blinked slowly. "I haven't even installed any lighting fixtures." Karen ignored that. She rattled the key again. "This gate is supposed to be HOA compliant. I should have access. You don't." Nathan replied calmly. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm allowed to inspect the premises. You signed the bylaws when you moved in." "I read the bylaws," he said. "Nowhere does it say you can enter private property uninvited, especially not without a warrant or a working key." Karen pulled back and crossed her arms. "You're going to regret this attitude." Nathan didn't respond, but inside, someone else was watching the whole exchange from behind the curtains. Governor Roland Pierce, a tall man with silver streaks in his beard, chuckled and took a sip of bourbon. "Is she always like this?" "Apparently," Nathan replied. "You picked one hell of a weekend to visit. She's about to pick one hell of a problem," the governor muttered outside. Karen stepped back and began dialing a number. Nathan's intercom buzzed, but he didn't answer. Instead, he opened the front door just wide enough for a stray cat to sneak through and turned to his guest. "You want to stay out of the camera shot?" Pierce leaned forward with a grin. "Nope. Let's see how this plays out." The gate cameras. Red light blinked steadily. Karen's voice echoed again over the intercom. "You've got 60 seconds to comply, or I'm calling in a violation notice. This'll be in the minutes." "And the board will." Nathan pressed mute. The governor raised his glass. "This neighborhood's going to love you." Nathan smiled faintly. "They'll love what's coming next even more." As Karen paced by the sidewalk, key in hand, muttering to herself and checking her phone, the camera caught everything, every glare, every muttered threat. And the best part, Nathan was just getting started, because the audience knows something big is coming, and there's still no clue why the governor is there. The hook is sustained to keep them watching into part 2. Karen didn't leave. After failing to unlock Nathan's front gate with her so-called master key, she stayed parked at the edge of the driveway watching, texting, stewing, inside the house. Nathan calmly shut the curtains. and walked back to the den where Governor Roland Pierce was examining a framed photo on the mantel. It showed the two men 20 years younger, standing in front of a dorm building at Ohio State. "You sure you want to keep this quiet?" the governor asked without turning round. Nathan nodded. "I want to see what she does when she thinks no one important is watching. She already tried to open your gate by force. What's next?" "That's the part I'm curious about." Back outside, Karen paced like a parking lot hawk, already dialing the vice chair of the HOA board, Leonard Marks, a retired dentist with a mustache that made him look far more important than he actually was. "Leonard, it's me," Karen snapped. As soon as he picked up, "I'm at 114 Oak Summit. That new guy, Nathan Carter, refused to let me in. His gate doesn't take the master key, and he's ignoring inspection protocol." There was silence on the line. Then Leonard replied in a low voice, "Karen, the bylaws don't technically give us right of entry. You know that." He signed. Then when he bought the place, she hissed, "I told the board last month if we start letting people customize gates, we lose control. You're not supposed to force inspections. You're escalating. I am preserving order." With a huff, she ended the call and turned to her clipboard. Karen jotted down the words: "Gate non-compliant, suspected unauthorized renovation, possible safety hazard." The sound of a soft whistle made her look up. A boy about 12 years old stood across the street holding a fishing rod and watching her with curiosity. "Is that the guy who's friends with the governor?" he asked. Innocently. Karen blinked. "What?" The boy shrugged. "My dad said he's got state people over. That's why they got that weird car last night with the government plate." Karen's lips parted slightly. Then her eyes narrowed. She walked briskly back to her cart and pulled out a pair of binoculars from the glove box from behind her tinted windshield. She zoomed in on the house. She could see motion through the curtains, but not clearly enough. She clicked the radio on the dash. "Unit 6 to ground security. Come in." A low voice crackled in reply. "Go ahead, Ms. Meadows. I want you to run a plate check. Black SUV, license number Sierra Bravo 571, parked near 114 Oak Summit. Let me know who it's registered to." There was a pause. Then, "Ma'am, you might want to check with county before we touch that one." Karen's grip tightened. "Why?" "Because that tag is on a protected list, reserved for active state officials. That SUV belongs to the office of the governor." Karen slowly set the radio down, her face turning from crimson to chalk. She blinked rapidly. "No, that's impossible." Inside the house, Nathan watched everything on the security monitor. He turned to Pierce. "She just ran your plates." Pierce chuckled. "She's not very subtle, is she? Watch this," Nathan said, grabbing his phone. He sent a single message to his private contact in the state patrol. "Governor confirmed on site. HOA president tried to enter, monitoring for further escalation." He leaned back with a smirk. "Let's see how bold she really is." Karen, meanwhile, was spiraling. She stormed out of the golf cart and marched back to the gate. Clipboard clutched to her chest like a weapon. "I'm issuing an emergency violation," she shouted. "Non-compliant security gate, unregistered guest vehicle, and possible illegal gathering." She slapped a bright yellow notice to the gate and turned dramatically, yelling to the empty air, "This is a matter of neighborhood safety. I will not be intimidated." Then she called 911. Inside the house, the governor raised an eyebrow. She really just called the police. Nathan picked up his drink. "Oh, it gets better." Because Karen was about to learn who else was listening. Karen just unknowingly escalated her HOA power trip to a potential state-level crisis. The tension encourages viewers to continue watching because police are now involved. and the governor is present. The dispatcher on the 911 call didn't recognize Karen Meadows by name, but that didn't stop her from speaking like she ran the town. "This is a matter of public safety," Karen insisted. "There's a potentially illegal gathering at 114 Oak Summit Drive, suspicious vehicle, high-profile security concern, and the homeowner is refusing access to HOA authority." The dispatcher hesitated. "Mom, are you reporting an emergency?" "I'm reporting obstruction. I'm the HOA president, and I have legal responsibilities too," the line crackled. "We'll notify local officers to assess. Please do not approach the residence again." Karen clicked off, flustered but satisfied. In her mind, she'd done her duty. Nathan Carter could wave around reinforced locks all he wanted soon. Uniformed officers would back her up and remind him who really held power in Oak Ridge Estates. Back inside the house, Nathan and Governor Roland Pierce watched her through the security feed. Karen was standing near the mailbox now, pretending to casually inspect a bush, clipboard in hand. The yellow HOA violation still flapped on the gate like a silent threat. "She called the police," Pierce said, swirling his drink. "She did. For what?" "Being locked out of my property," Nathan replied. The governor raised an eyebrow. "You're lucky this is my off day." Nathan chuckled. "You said you needed quiet. This neighborhood usually delivers." Pierce looked back at the camera feed. Except for her. 10 minutes later, the quiet hum of a cruiser echoed down the lane. A black and white local patrol car rolled up slowly. Karen immediately straightened her posture, waving both arms like she was guiding an aircraft. "I'm so glad you came," she said as the officer stepped out. "This homeowner is causing all sorts of trouble in unauthorized construction, suspicious activity, and now an SUV with protected tags." The officer, a young man named Officer Riley, flipped open a notebook. "Did you say protected tags?" "Yes, and I have no idea who's in there, but I need to find out immediately. This is a high-risk violation. You can see my official citation on the gate." Officer Riley glanced at the yellow paper, then at the locked gate. "Mum, do you live here?" "I'm the HOA president," Karen repeated, now more firmly. "That's not what I asked." Karen bristled. "I'm here representing the board. The property owner is ignoring mandatory access." "Ma'am," Officer Riley said carefully, "being HOA president does not give you legal authority to enter someone's property. This is private land." Karen blinked. "So you're not going to enforce my entry rights?" "There are no entry rights, ma'am. That's not how it works." As Riley spoke, the gate clicked, then slowly opened inward. Nathan stepped forward, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. Standing just behind him, in full view of the cruiser, was Governor Roland Pierce, now holding a phone and calmly recording the scene. Karen's breath hitched. Officer Riley did a double take, his eyes darting to the governor. Pierce gave a polite nod. "Officer, sir," Riley replied quickly. "I didn't realize." "No trouble," Pierce said, "just enjoying a quiet visit, until this woman here attempted to gain access to the home, called in a false report, and misrepresented her authority." Karen opened her mouth, but couldn't find the right words. "I'm not pressing charges," Pierce continued, "but I will be filing a formal notice with the county, and I expect the HOA board will hear about this before I leave town." Karen stared at him, stunned. "You're actually the governor," Pierce smiled. "That's right. And you just tried to inspect my bourbon glass." Officer Riley looked uncomfortable. "Is there anything you'd like me to do, sir?" "Escort Ms. Meadows off the property, kindly," the governor said. Riley turned to Karen. "Ma'am, let's step over to your vehicle." She hesitated, then turned around, cheeks burning. and walked stiffly toward her cart. Nathan remained quiet, but the small security camera caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. When the gate shut again, the governor turned to Nathan. "You think she's going to stop now?" "Not a chance," Nathan replied. They both looked at the monitor. Karen sat in her golf cart with both hands on the wheel, staring at the house. Something in her eyes said this wasn't over, not by a long shot, and Nathan knew it. The audience now sees the governor take a firm stance while Karen's behavior escalates from HOA meddling to near harassment. The tension builds naturally, making viewers want to see how far she'll go and how Nathan will retaliate. The gate stayed shut for 2 days. No new HOA notices, no unexpected visits, just silence. But Nathan knew it wasn't over. Karen had retreated, not surrendered. People like her didn't go quiet when they were embarrassed. They recalculated. They planned their comeback, and the fact that her key hadn't worked still burned deeper than the public scolding. Inside the house, the governor's brief getaway continued. He'd given Nathan the weekend as a personal favor, part politics, part friendship, and part escape from reporters hounding him over state budget reforms. Here, behind the steel gate and encrypted cameras, he could just be Roland. No suits, no handlers, just whiskey, old music, and peace. Until the mailbox blew open Monday morning. A new violation notice had been slid through the fence. This one typed, notarized, and stapled to a packet of printed regulations. Nathan picked it up with a gloved hand and read it aloud to the governor over breakfast. Failure to comply with HOA key access policies. Suspected unauthorized security modifications. Intend to appeal for forced inspection under emergency clause. 7B. Pierce raised an eyebrow. She wants a forced inspection. Nathan nodded. She thinks there's a loophole in the HOA rules that lets her request an override if a property poses a security risk to the community. Pierce sipped his coffee. You're about to become the neighborhood threat. That was probably the plan all along. But Nathan wasn't worried. He hadn't just read the bylaws, he'd run them through software to detect contradiction clauses and outdated legal language. That packet Karen sent, he'd already flagged 3 items she couldn't legally enforce. Still, this wasn't about rules anymore. This was about ego, and Karen's next move would be personal. Later that evening, Nathan watched the security feed from his phone. The governor had gone upstairs for a call, and the neighborhood had returned to its usual quiet, except for one detail. A shadow moved behind the hedges near the property line. Nathan zoomed the camera. There she was, Karen, wearing black leggings and a hoodie, carrying a flashlight. She was ducking near the east side fence, where the trees were thicker and visibility weaker. And she wasn't alone. Another figure stood beside her, Leonard Marks, the HOA vice chair. He looked nervous. She looked determined. Nathan hit record. I told you, Leonard whispered on the footage. This is trespassing. It's not, Karen hissed. We're inspecting. It's perimeter monitoring. We're not entering. Technically, you brought bolt cutters. Karen didn't answer. She knelt near a utility box that fed into Nathan's external security system and began unscrewing a panel. Inside, Nathan called down the hall, Roland, you may want to see this. Within seconds, the governor was beside him, eyes glued to the monitor. Tell me that's not what it looks like. She's trying to tap the exterior feed. Nathan muttered, probably to kill the gate camera. You want me to call State Patrol? Nathan shook his head. No, let her finish. The camera captured every second, Karen removing wires, Leonard whispering about getting rusted, and finally, the 2 of them ducking back into the shadows and disappearing into the side path. Behind Law for 7. Nathan opened a backup app and reactivated the secondary camera hidden in the birdhouse. "Why'd you let her do it?" the governor asked. "Because now it's criminal," Nathan said calmly. "And I don't just have security footage, I've got a digital chain of evidence. She thinks she's sneaking around. But the moment she touched that box, she triggered a silent alert to my cloud system. Every motion, every word, it's logged and time-stamped." Pierce let out a low whistle. "She's going to go down for this." "Oh, she's going down for more than this," Nathan said. "I just needed her to take the first illegal step." That night, while Karen slept soundly thinking she'd taken back control, Nathan was packaging clips into a secure drive labeled Exhibit A, and before the sun rose, he'd scheduled a meeting, not with the HOA, but with the state attorney's office. Karen's attempted inspection has turned into tampering and low-level criminal activity, with Nathan now taking the evidence to the state level. The audience is pulled into wanting to see how far this will go and how Karen will respond when the law starts pushing back. Sunlight filtered through the pines, casting long shadows over Oak Ridge Estates. But there was nothing peaceful about the air that morning. Nathan Carter arrived at the State District Office at 9:02 a.m. sharp, dressed in a button-down shirt and carrying a plain manila envelope under one arm. He was ushered past reception without delay. His appointment was flagged as urgent, and he wasn't alone. Waiting in a side conference room was Governor Roland Pierce, leaning casually against the wall, sipping coffee like it was just another Tuesday. The clerk at the front desk stared through the glass. Confused people didn't normally show up with the governor in tow, but Nathan didn't explain, and Pierce didn't smile. They were there to drop a hammer. Inside the conference room, Nathan placed the envelope on a table. "It's all in here. Tampering with private security systems, after-dark surveillance, audio recordings, an approved entry attempt. She's broken at least 4 property laws, and possibly a 5th depending on the utility damage." A state investigator in a navy blazer nodded. "And this HOA president, she acted on her own. She involved a board member, Leonard Marks," Nathan added, "but you can hear him on tape objecting." "She kept going." Governor Pierce leaned forward. "Just to be clear, this wasn't political. But I was inside the home when she made false claims, tried to force entry, and then called 911 under pretense of emergency. I won't press charges personally, but the state reserves the right to follow up." The investigator slid the envelope toward her, then paused. "Would you be willing to submit this video formally if we initiate proceedings?" Nathan didn't hesitate. "I already made 3 backups." By the time Nathan left the building, the wheels were already in motion. Back at Oak Ridge, Karen Meadows was having a different kind of morning. She had rallied 3 of her loyal board members for an emergency compliance audit. There was talk of filing new neighborhood fines, passing a motion to increase gate control power, even pushing for an amendment to enforce full key access to all properties. "People are getting too bold," Karen said sharply. "If we let Carter get away with it, next thing you know, everyone's going to start locking down." Leonard Marks shifted awkwardly in his seat. He hadn't slept well. His name was all over Nathan's footage, and while he hadn't cut anything or touched any wires, he had been there, and it was starting to eat at him. "Maybe we should slow down," Leonard said. "Just until we know where things stand," Karen scoffed. "You saw how he acted. You saw how smug he was. He thinks that just because he had some big shot visitor, he's untouchable. He's not. We run this community." But Karen didn't know what Nathan had delivered that morning. She didn't know her voice was being dissected by a state audio forensics team. And she didn't know that a quiet memo had just been sent from the governor's legal office to the county commissioner's desk. That afternoon, two unmarked state SUVs cruised through Oak Ridge's stone-columned entrance. They didn't flash lights. They didn't sound sirens. They parked calmly in front of Karen's house. Karen opened the door, saw the men in suits, and blinked like she'd walked into a dream. "Can I help you, Karen Meadows?" one of them asked, flashing a badge. "We're with state investigations. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding an incident at 114 Oak Summit." Karen's lips twitched. Incident. Surveillance footage. Security tampering. A formal complaint's been submitted by the homeowner and supported by a third-party witness. We're reviewing for potential trespassing, misuse of HOA authority, and falsified emergency reporting. Karen tried to laugh. "Is this about that gate thing? I was doing my job. We'll need you to come down and give a formal statement." Karen crossed her arms. "I'll call my lawyer." The agent nodded. "You should." The neighborhood was quiet, but blinds twitched open as curious eyes peered through slats. Golf carts slowed. Phones came out. People whispered. For the first time in 10 years, Karen Meadows didn't feel in charge. She felt watched. And Nathan. He was still at home, relaxed, watching the live feed from the birdhouse camera while sipping tea. "Troopers just showed up," he said aloud, even though the governor had already left. "Let's see what she says when they ask the questions." Because now, it wasn't about rules, or inspections, or gates. It was about consequences. The law has officially entered the HOA drama, and Karen's past actions now hold legal weight. The audience now wants to know, will Karen fold or strike back harder? Karen didn't sleep that night. Not because of the visit from state investigators, not because of the sudden quiet in the group chat where the other board members had once backed her every move. Not even because Leonard had stopped replying to her texts. It was the silence. No response from Nathan Carter. No public post. No neighbor confrontation. Just the looming fear that whatever he was planning, he was waiting until she let her guard down. By the next morning, Oak Ridge buzzed with whispers. Someone had leaked a short clip only 10 seconds from Nathan's security footage. It showed Karen crouched by his utility box in the dark, holding bolt cutters and muttering something about cutting the damn feed. The clip didn't show Leonard, didn't show her backing away, didn't show context. And that was the problem. She hadn't just embarrassed herself. She'd confirmed every story the residents had whispered about for years. Karen with the clipboard, Karen and her threats, Karen and her key. The worst part, the HOA board didn't back her up. They called an emergency meeting, but not to support her. To question her. Inside the neighborhood clubhouse, Karen stood before a long oak table with 4 other board members seated across from her. Leonard sat farthest to the end, arms folded, face pale. "Well," she asked. Marcia Donaldson, secretary of the board, cleared her throat. "We reviewed the footage. We're aware of the visit from state officers. And we're concerned." Karen, concerned. Karen barked. "Do you have any idea what he's doing? This is manipulation. He's trying to undermine HOA authority with personal connections. There's no rule," Marcia said, "that allows the HOA to trespass. You crossed a legal boundary, not just a policy one." Leonard finally spoke. "She made me go with her. I told her not to touch the box. She did it anyway." Karen stared at him. "You're throwing me under the bus." "I'm covering my name," Leonard snapped. "You used your position like it gave you a badge." The room went still. Karen's face turned red. "He's the one breaking the rules. You're all too scared to admit it." Then the door opened. Nathan Carter stepped into the room. Calm, clean cut, holding a printed folder. No security, No police stopped, just him. And every head turned. I was invited, Nathan said, nodding toward Marcia, who motioned to the empty chair beside her. Karen stepped in front of the table. You can't be here. This is a private board meeting. You waived that when your violation involved the homeowner directly, Marcia replied. Nathan walked past Karen slowly, placed the folder down, and opened it. Inside were 8 photos, printed in high resolution. Each showed Karen either at the gate, tampering with the panel, arguing with the officer, or standing beside the utility box with a flashlight. These are still frames from my security feed. They've already been submitted to the state attorney's office. What you did violates state property code, HOA charter laws, and several civil statutes. Karen crossed her arms tightly. And what? You think you're a hero? I think I've had enough of living in a place where someone uses their master key like it makes them sheriff. Silence. Nathan took a breath. So I'm offering a choice. You can step down voluntarily, resign from the HOA board, surrender the keys, and sign a non-interference agreement. Karen scoffed. Or what? Or I press every charge on file. He said plainly, trespassing, tampering, false reporting, and I release the rest of the footage, the parts that haven't been leaked yet. Leonard glanced up, eyes wide. Karen froze. You leaked that? No, Nathan replied. Someone else did. And they only leaked 10 seconds. Imagine what happens when the whole neighborhood sees the rest. Marcia opened a small drawer and pulled out a paper with typed resolution. Terms, we've already prepared the resignation form. Karen, you just have to sign it. Karen's hands trembled. You people are letting an outsider dictate the board. No, Leonard said coldly. We're finally standing up to you. Nathan didn't move. He just watched. And after a long, angry pause, Karen signed. Then, she walked out without another word. Back at his house that evening, Nathan stood beside the governor, who had returned for one final glass of bourbon before heading back to the Capitol. Was it worth it? The governor asked. Nathan smiled slightly. Almost. Nathan nodded toward the lake. Because she's not done. Not really. People like Karen don't disappear quietly. And sure enough, Karen had one card left. One no one saw coming. Karen appears defeated. But the final line leaves viewers tense and curious. Perfect setup for the twist in part 7. The confrontation and legal fallout serve as a natural engagement anchor. The audience is left needing to know what Karen's next move is. For the first time in a decade, Oak Ridge Estates had no HOA president. The board issued a formal notice to all homeowners. Karen Meadows had stepped down, effective immediately, and would have no further authority or access to common property, finances, or enforcement decisions. The community mailboxes overflowed with copies of the announcement. Neighbors shared it like it was a holiday card. Some were relieved, others were stunned, but one person was furious. Karen watched the neighborhood from behind the tinted glass of her upstairs office window. Her resignation was public, but her rage wasn't. That paper she signed, it meant nothing to her. She wasn't finished, not when she still had the ultimate weapon buried in her desk drawer. Records, files, decades of emails, complaint logs, private fines never formally disclosed to the board. She'd built an empire off of silence, and she wasn't going to let one tech-savvy newcomer with a smug friend in politics wipe it all away. That night, Karen opened her personal laptop and logged into the old cloud-based HOA management system. She hadn't used it in over a year after all. She'd migrated everything to a private system only she had access to, but the official one still held something valuable. Hidden beneath a series of misnamed folders was a locked document labeled Permit Exceptions. Inside was a list of addresses, and one in particular was highlighted in red: 114 Oak Summit Drive, Nathan's home. And attached to the entry was an unapproved architectural request dated from 2 months ago, filed under a previous owner's name. Karen smiled. The document had been buried, overlooked, but legally, it showed that modifications made to Nathan's property, including his upgraded gate, were never properly transferred under his name. It meant the renovations were technically unapproved, and that gave her just enough to strike back. The next morning, Karen walked into the county permit office with the file in hand. She wore a blazer, no clipboard, just quiet confidence. "I'm reporting a non-compliant security structure at 114 Oak Summit. It violates the original property permit. This was never reapproved by the HOA under the new owner." The clerk blinked. "Are you on the HOA board?" Karen's lips curved. "I'm the former president, and I'm submitting this as a private citizen under municipal code. You're required to investigate." The clerk took the file without a word. That afternoon, a county code enforcement vehicle rolled through Oak Ridge and stopped outside Nathan's house. Nathan answered the door, polite as ever, but when the officer explained the purpose of the visit, his smile thinned. "Unauthorized structure," Nathan repeated. "You're saying my gate violates code?" The officer nodded. "According to our file, the permit wasn't formally transferred during the sale. That makes your modification technically unapproved. HOA approval is listed under a different homeowner's name." Nathan knew exactly what happened. Karen had found a paper trail, one likely incomplete, buried, or filed incorrectly, but just real enough to trigger bureaucratic headaches. He accepted the notice without arguing. But his mind was already spinning. By dusk, Nathan was back in his home office, digging through files, legal documents, emails from escrow, contractor receipts. And then he found it, a signed letter dated and stamped from the previous owner's attorney. It explicitly transferred all architectural modification approvals to Nathan as part of the home's closing. It had been legally binding from day one. Karen had left out one page from the file. One critical page. Nathan picked up his phone. "Roland," he said calmly. "She tried to burn my house down with paperwork, but she just missed a spot." The governor laughed on the other end. "Need me to step back in?" "Not yet," Nathan replied. "But I think the county will be very interested in what she left off the file." Later that night, he emailed a scanned copy of the full permit chain to the county office, CCing the compliance director. And for good measure, he attached something else. A document showing that Karen Meadows had personally approved her own patio expansion last year without a board vote, public notice, or proper variance filing. It wasn't just Nathan who had unpermitted work. It was Karen. And this time, her name was on every page. Karen tries a sneaky comeback using buried paperwork, but Nathan flips it, exposing her as the one guilty of the real violation. Viewers now want to see how Karen falls from her final act of sabotage and what Nathan does with the power shift. 3 days after Karen tried to weaponize the old permit system against Nathan Carter, her world collapsed quietly, efficiently, and permanently. It started with an email sent at 9:14 a.m. from the county compliance office. The subject line read, "Urgent, unauthorized modifications, and conflict of interest review." Karen Meadows attached were 3 files. A scanned permit for Karen's backyard expansion, a contractor invoice with her name on it, a timestamp HOA approval form, signed solely by her own hand. The board had never voted on it. No neighbors were informed. And the most damning detail, the expansion extended 6 feet into protected community green space, something every HOA officer was trained to avoid. That same afternoon, two men from the county survey office arrived at her home. They measured, photographed, and documented everything without small talk. Karen tried to follow them through the yard, but they didn't respond. One simply held up a clipboard and said, "Official business, please remain inside." Inside, Karen's phone buzzed. A text from Leonard Marks. "I warned you, you didn't listen." She tried calling him. No answer. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Cease and desist order. Mandated rollback of patio extension. $11,400 fine for code violation. Karen read the document 3 times, hoping it would change if she blinked hard enough. But the final line hit like a hammer. You are permanently barred from holding or applying for any HOA board position within the county for a minimum of 5 years. She stood frozen in her kitchen, surrounded by silence. The woman who once held a master key to every gate, every garden box, every side entrance in Oak Ridge was now officially locked out, not just from the boardroom, from her own illusion of control. But it wasn't over. That evening, a nondescript black sedan pulled into her driveway. Out stepped the same state investigator from earlier, calm, courteous, and holding a thin envelope. Karen opened the door without speaking. The agent handed her the envelope. "This is not an arrest warrant," he said flatly, "but it is a formal summons. You'll need to appear before the county magistrate regarding false claims submitted to the permit office." Karen's voice cracked. "That was a misunderstanding. Tell it to the judge," he said. "And the ball cutters," he added as he turned. "That's still under review." She didn't answer. The door closed. 3 houses down, neighbors peeked from their windows. And from his front porch, Nathan watched it all unfold. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply set down his coffee, walked to a small safe in the hallway, and removed an object wrapped in cloth, Karen's master key. She had dropped it during one of her last unauthorized gate attempts. Nathan had retrieved it, not out of spite, but symbolism. He placed the key in a padded envelope, attached a typed note, and drove it to the mailbox. The note read, "Return to sender. No access required." That same night, as dusk turned to evening, the governor called one final time. "Well?" Pierce asked. Nathan stood in his backyard, the lake quiet and still behind him. "She's done. Her HOA empire just became a footnote." "Any regrets?" Nathan thought for a moment. "Just one." "What's that?" "That she ever thought she was untouchable." The governor chuckled. "Careful. Power does that to people." "I know," Nathan said. "That's why I keep my gates locked." They hung up, and for the first time in weeks, Nathan walked his fence line with no tension in his shoulders. The surveillance system was still armed. The cameras still watched, but he didn't feel watched anymore. He felt free. And as for Karen, she stayed indoors, her patio untouched, her phone silent, her clipboard collecting dust. Her key was gone. And this time, it wasn't the locks that had changed. It was the neighborhood. Karen loses everything: her power, her credibility, and her illusion of control. Nathan doesn't need revenge. He wins through patience, evidence, and poise. The audience is left with closure, calm, and subtle poetic justice.